The evening air in downtown Portland carried the scent of autumn leaves and the distant promise of rain. David Harrison sat alone at a sidewalk table outside Café Bellecourt, watching the city settle into its familiar rhythm of evening commuters and early diners. At 62, he had learned to appreciate these quiet moments between meetings, when the demands of running Harrison Industries seemed to fade into the background. The pasta arrabbiata sat half-finished on his plate. His appetite had diminished lately, a casualty of too many business dinners and the lingering grief that still visited him unexpectedly. It had been 2 years since Patricia's passing, and though the sharp edges of loss had softened, solitary meals still felt incomplete. David glanced at his watch, a vintage Rolex that Patricia had given him for their 25th anniversary. The board meeting wasn't until tomorrow morning, and his hotel room held little appeal. He'd grown accustomed to extending these simple pleasures, finding comfort in observing the life that flowed around him on the busy street. A young woman approached the cafe's outdoor seating area, moving with the careful steps of someone carrying precious cargo. She held a baby close to her chest, wrapped in what appeared to be a hand-knitted blanket. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her clothes, while clean, showed the wear of difficult circumstances. David watched as she paused near the restaurant's entrance, her eyes scanning the outdoor diners with a mixture of hope and hesitation. There was something in her posture that spoke of quiet desperation held in check by dignity. When their eyes briefly met, he saw not just need, but intelligence and strength. The woman approached his table with measured steps, stopping at a respectful distance. "Excuse me, sir," she said, her voice soft but clear. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I noticed you weren't finishing your meal. May I have your leftovers?" The question hung in the evening air between them. David had been asked for money countless times over the years, but never quite like this. There was no aggression in her request, no manipulation. Just honest need, stated simply. He looked at her more closely. She couldn't have been more than 25, with eyes that held the particular exhaustion that comes from sleepless nights with a young child. The baby in her arms stirred slightly, making small sounds that any parent would recognize. "Of course," David said, pushing his chair back. "Please, would you like to sit down?" The woman hesitated. "I don't want to intrude on your evening." "You're not intruding," David replied gently. "I was just finishing up anyway. Please." She settled carefully into the chair across from him, adjusting the baby with practiced ease. The infant appeared to be perhaps 4 months old, with tiny fingers that occasionally escaped the blanket to grasp at air. "I'm David," he said, signaling the waiter. "Christina," she replied, "and this is Lily." The waiter approached, and David ordered another portion of the pasta, along with bread and a cup of tea. "The food here is quite good," he explained to Christina. "You shouldn't have to settle for leftovers." Christina's eyes filled with tears that she quickly blinked away. "You don't have to do that. I didn't mean to." "I know what you meant," David said softly, "but I'd like to buy you dinner if you'll allow me." As they waited for the food to arrive, Christina told him pieces of her story. She had come to Portland 6 months ago, fleeing an abusive situation. She'd found work at a diner, but the hours were unpredictable and childcare was expensive. 2 weeks ago, the diner had closed suddenly, leaving her without income. "I've been staying at the women's shelter," she explained, gently rocking Lily. "But there's a waiting list for the longer-term programs. I have a job interview tomorrow, at a hotel downtown, housekeeping position. It's not much, but it's a start." David listened without interrupting, recognizing the courage it took to share such personal details with a stranger. He thought of his own daughter, Sarah, now 35, and living in Seattle with her family. What if she had ever found herself in such circumstances? When Christina's meal arrived, she ate slowly, savoring each bite while keeping one hand free to comfort Lily. David found himself thinking about the countless business dinners he'd attended, the expensive meals that had become routine, meaningless. "How old is Lily?" he asked. 4 months next week, Christina replied, her voice warming as she looked at her daughter. She's been such a good baby through all of this. Sometimes I think she understands that we're in this together." David smiled. "Babies are more perceptive than we give them credit for. My daughter was the same way when she was small. She seemed to sense when Patricia and I needed her to be patient with us as we learned to be parents." "You have a daughter?" "Sarah. She has 2 children of her own now, 8 and 10. David pulled out his phone, showing Christina a recent photo from his granddaughter's school play. Time moves so quickly. One day you're worried about teething and sleepless nights, and the next thing you know, you're watching them graduate from college. They talked as the evening deepened around them. Christina shared her dreams of finishing her nursing degree someday, of giving Lily the stable life she deserved. David found himself talking about Patricia, about the foundation they had started together to help families in crisis. "She always said that everyone deserves a second chance," David said, "that circumstances don't define character." As the cafe began to wind down for the evening, David made a decision that felt both spontaneous and inevitable. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card, writing something on the back. "Christina," he said, "I want you to call this number tomorrow morning. Ask for Helen Martinez. She's the director of our family assistance program." Christina looked at the card, then back at David. "I don't understand." "The Harrison Foundation provides emergency support for families in transition. Temporary housing, assistance, childcare vouchers, job placement services. It's what we do." Christina stared at the card, her hands trembling slightly. "But why? You don't even know me." David was quiet for a moment, watching as Lily opened her eyes and gazed around with the unfocused wonder of infancy. "Because 35 years ago my wife and I were young and struggling. We had big dreams but no money, and Sarah was just a baby. A stranger helped us when we needed it most. Not just with money, but with opportunity and dignity." He paused, remembering. "That man, Mr. Kowalski, gave me my first real job. He saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself at the time. He taught me that success isn't just about what you achieve, but about what you make possible for others." Christina wiped away tears that had begun to fall freely. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll call Helen tomorrow. Say you'll let us help you get back on your feet." "I will," Christina whispered. "Thank you." As they prepared to part ways, David watched Christina gather her things with careful attention to Lily's comfort. There was something profound in witnessing a young mother's devotion, the way love could persist and even flourish in the most challenging circumstances. "Christina," he said as she stood to leave, "that job interview tomorrow, what time?" 10 o'clock at the Marriott downtown. David smiled. "The general manager there, Tom Bradley, is an old friend. I'll give him a call tonight. Not to guarantee anything," he added quickly, "but to make sure they see what I saw tonight. Someone with character and determination." 6 months later, David received a handwritten letter at his office. Christina had gotten the hotel job, and with the foundation's assistance, had moved into a small apartment near Lily's daycare. She was taking evening classes toward her nursing degree and had included a photo of Lily, now sitting up and smiling at the camera. "Mr. Harrison," the letter read, "I think about that evening often. You showed me that asking for help isn't shameful, and that accepting kindness isn't weakness. But mostly you showed me that there are still people in the world who see others as family, not strangers. I hope someday I can pass on what you gave me. Not just the practical help, but the reminder that we're all connected, that we all matter." David folded the letter carefully and placed it in his desk drawer, next to Patricia's photo. He thought about that evening outside the cafe, how a simple request for leftovers had reminded him of something essential about human connection and the privilege of being able to help. That night, he called Sarah in Seattle. "I've been thinking about your mother's favorite saying," he told her, "about everyone deserving a second chance." "What about it, Dad?" "I think she would have added something to that. I think she would have said that sometimes giving someone else a second chance gives you one too." As David looked out his office window at the city lights below, He reflected on how the most meaningful moments often arrived unannounced. A young mother's courage in asking for help. An old man's recognition of his younger self in someone else's struggle. The simple miracle of human kindness, connecting strangers across the divide of circumstance.